Jumbo, everyone, and welcome to our first episode of Safari Mack in Africa, where I'm your guide and your host helping you make connections to the wild. If you're joining me from last week's episode, you may recall that I officially declared that we are leaving the continent of Asia for now and are beginning our very first expedition in Africa to uncover a group of animals which have been given the popular name the Big Five. But now, if you also recall, I didn't say exactly what animal we were going to start with. Instead, I wanted to hear from all of you what you think the first animal was going to be. If you guessed lion or elephant, nope. I want to save them for a bit of a more special time. As for the rhino and Cape buffalo, they're a little too rough on the edges, so I want to give them a little more time to prepare. So instead, I'd like to welcome you, the fourth largest member of the big cat family. I'm talking about leopards. Now, to understand the story of the leopard, we need to go back 20 million years ago to meet a creature called Spilardus, which, according to paleontology, was said to be the ancient ancestor of all cats. So, from tigers to your household cat, you can trace their genetics and ancestry back to this single creature. Now, leopards in general first evolved somewhere around 2 million years ago during the Pleistocene period. But the more modern day leopard that we know of today first started in Africa around 0.8 million years ago, and then because of their incredible adaptability, they would eventually make their way out of Africa, cover certain parts of the Middle East, and then go up to Asia, even making their claim somewhere with a few in Russia around 0.3 million years ago. Now, we recognize these different subspecies: the African, the Indo-Chinese, the Javan, the Arabian, the Indian, the Sri Lankan, the Persian, the North China, and the Amur leopard, in which this subspecies is considered to be the most critically endangered. But for today's video, we're just focusing on African leopards. Let's continue. With the exception of lions, like all cats, leopards live a complete solitary lifestyle, either living in established territories or following somewhat of a nomadic lifestyle, wandering from one place to the other. Now, if you wanted to find leopards in Africa, you're in luck. Basically, you can find them in almost any kind of terrain, from arid bush country like in South Africa to the Congo rainforest, even some edges of the deserts, even the vast open grasslands. But now, like mentioned in the tiger episode, the size of a territory is only governed by exactly how many animals there are for these cats to hunt. So the less animals there are, the smaller the territory. And then vice versa. If the more animals there are, the larger the territory. And just like tigers, sometimes male leopards may allow a female into their territories because he sees them as a possibility for breeding and passing his genetics on to the next generation. Now, after an intimate bond, which lasts usually 3 to 4 days, in which they mate frequently, they eventually go their separate ways, or she may choose to stay in his territory. So after a pregnancy of around 90 to 105 days, she'll go into a thicket or find a giant granite outcropping, which is called a kopje, Kopjes, a kopje. She will give birth around anywhere from 1 to 4 cubs, in which for the first few days of their lives, mom stays close and nurses them in the den and constantly moves them from place to place until they're ready to catch up with their mother on treks. By the time they're somewhere 7 to 8 weeks old, they begin to get their first taste of meat, in which they stop suckling and learn from mom exactly how to hunt prey for themselves. By the time they are 2 years old, they are ready to leave their mother and go off on their own. Now, while they're growing up, if they're staying in the male's territory, their father is not directly involved in the raising of the young. Instead, as long as he can keep other males out of his territory, then he's providing the indirect protection for these cubs to be able to grow up safely. But of course, even if they're getting protection from indirectly from their father or directly from their mother, not even tight security can't always prevent a certain percentage of the cubs dying within their first few months of life. Now let's figure out what's on the menu. Like all cats, like all apex predators, nothing soothes their appetite than meat. But now, these cats are no picky eaters. Instead, they will eat almost anything, from dung beetles, rodents, rabbits, different species of antelope like these impala. Even sometimes they will go for large prey, but not always. It's not really common to see a leopard try to take on a fully grown zebra, especially if it's in good health, because one well-aimed kick can kill a leopard instantly. Now, if they were to go after large prey, which sometimes they will go for animals almost as large as a young giraffe, like I said, it's incredibly rare for them to do that. They're not meant to be bringing down prey that's usually 3 to 4 times their size. They're wanting to focus on lighter animals. First, like all cats, despite having a good amount of speed, which is for leopards 38 miles an hour, unless they can get close to their prey, they really don't stand a chance. Their best tactic is just sneaking up quietly on their prey, and then when the time is right, jump forth and begin the chase, in which they might be successful, but usually 90% of the time they might not always get a meal. And that can be hard, especially if it's a mother with cubs. I also forgot to mention, sometimes leopards will even go for animals such as fish, which they're pretty good at it. If you want to see something else that's pretty cool, I will share with you a link to a video of Saba Douglas Hamilton, a world-leading expert on big cats, watching a leopard take down not one wildebeest calf, but 2 wildebeest calves. Now, in terms of their place in human culture, across the continent of Africa, animals are revered, feared, and respected. But it turns out leopards may be a lot more respected than you may realize. Now, in certain African cultures, it's tradition for the highest ranking man, like a chief or a king, to wear leopard skins, which shows as a symbol of his status over the entire village. There's even been a group of people, there was once a group of people called the Anyoto, who were, according to TravelNord.com, were said to be famous for killing their enemies with fake leopard claws and leave fake footprints near the corpses left in the forest, giving the impression of death by leopards. The word Anyoto means to scratch in Kibali, which is a Bantu language spoken in the Congo. But unfortunately, what we know about these people is unfortunately all based on what was gathered in colonial times, back when Europeans were still claiming their places in Africa. And unfortunately, it displays them in a very negative impact, a very vicious stereotype of how Africans have been portrayed, especially in Edgar Rice Burroughs' novel Tarzan and the Leopard Men. Now, I think maybe in a way the best form of positivity, because we cannot get because traditions still show people wearing leopard skins today as part of their tradition, it may have led to the creation of Marvel's character, the Black Panther. So, and we know that today as somewhat of a more positive look. Also, believe it or not, in Disney's The Lion King, the opening chant in the Circle of Life, Na Tsingonya Babagitu Aba, the Zulu language actually translates to, "Here comes a lion, father. Oh yes, it's a lion," etc., etc. A lion we are going to conquer. A lion and a leopard come to this open place. So what I'm saying is, in terms of the writing, they were showing about how leopards have their ties in African royalty. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid that's all the time that I have for this week. So for those who have joined me for the first time, welcome. And if you haven't done so, be sure to check out my other videos. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button. And if you have questions, be sure to send me an email, which you'll find the address down in the description below. Be sure to join me next Saturday for part 2. And until then, this is Safari Mack. I'll see you all out there in Africa.